The morning mist clung to the valley floor as Lily made her way down the well-worn path from Widow Chapman's small cabin. The dew-soaked grass dampened the hem of her faded blue dress, but she didn't mind. These quiet morning walks were the only time the 12-year-old truly felt free. 3 years had passed since the fever took her parents, leaving her alone in the frontier settlement of Pine Creek. Most folks had their own hungry mouths to feed, but Widow Chapman, with her bent back and gentle hands, had opened her door without hesitation. "The good Lord didn't bless me with children," she'd said, patting Lily's trembling shoulder. "But he sent me you instead." Lily clutched the small woven basket tighter as she ventured deeper into the woods. Widow Chapman needed fresh herbs for her remedies, and Lily knew just where to find them. The old woman had taught her which plants healed fevers, which soothed coughs, and which were best left untouched. This knowledge made Lily useful, and being useful meant having a place to belong. The settlement of Pine Creek sat nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, with 50-odd wooden cabins clustered around a central meeting hall. Beyond the valley to the west lay territories belonging to the native tribes, forbidden lands according to most settlers. The river marking this invisible boundary rushed with spring meltwater this time of year, its constant murmur drawing Lily like a whispered secret. "Don't you go wandering near that river, child," Widow Chapman warned almost daily. "Those natives been restless since the hunting parties pushed farther west." But curiosity tugged at Lily stronger than fear. The river called to her, and on mornings like this when chores could wait, she answered its summons. The forest changed as Lily walked, tall pines giving way to leafy oaks and maples. Sunlight filtered through the new spring foliage, creating dancing patterns on the forest floor. A rabbit darted across her path, freezing momentarily to assess her before disappearing into the underbrush. "I won't hurt you," Lily whispered to the vanished creature. She often spoke to the forest animals, imagining they might understand her loneliness. Her fingers brushed against the smooth bark of an old maple tree. The one she called the grandfather tree. Its massive trunk was wider than 3 men standing shoulder to shoulder, and its branches reached toward the sky like outstretched arms. This was her marker. The river lay just beyond. Lily paused, listening for human voices. The settlers rarely ventured this far, but occasionally hunting parties passed through. Hearing nothing but birdsong, she continued forward until the trees thinned and the glimmering surface of the river came into view. The water rushed over smooth stones, creating swirls and eddies that mesmerized her. On the opposite bank, the landscape looked much the same. Trees, rocks, wildflowers, yet somehow different, mysterious. That was where they lived, the native people with their animal hide dwellings and strange languages. Sometimes Lily wondered if they had children her age. Did they play games? Did they lose parents to fever too? Widow Chapman said they were dangerous, but the settlement's preacher reminded his congregation that all were God's children. Lily wasn't sure who to believe. Setting her basket down on a flat rock, she knelt and dipped her fingers into the cool water. Tiny minnows darted away from her touch, silver flashes beneath the surface. The river wasn't especially wide here, perhaps 30 feet across, but the current was strong. In summer months, when the water ran lower, there were stepping stones that appeared, creating a natural crossing. Her father had shown her once before the fever took him. A splash from downstream caught her attention. Lily froze, her heart suddenly pounding. Was it just a fish jumping? Or someone else? Moving with careful steps, she crept along the riverbank, using the brush as cover. 20 paces downriver, she stopped and peered through a screen of young willow branches. A deer, she hoped. Or maybe one of the beaver family that had built a dam farther downstream. Instead, she saw the unmistakable shape of a person crouched by the water's edge on the far bank. Not a settler, the clothing was wrong. A native, then. Lily's first instinct was to run, to race back to the safety of Widow Chapman's cabin. But curiosity held her in place. The figure was small, a child perhaps. From this distance, Lily couldn't tell if it was a boy or girl, but something about their movement seemed hesitant, pained. The child dipped a cloth into the river and pressed it against their leg. Injured, Lily realized. The child was hurt. Common sense told her to leave immediately. Widow Chapman would be frantic if she knew how close Lily was to one of them. The settlement had been buzzing with tension for weeks, ever since a hunting party claimed they'd been chased from tribal hunting grounds. Some men wanted to organize a militia, while others counseled patience. Either way, this was no place for a 12-year-old orphan girl. Yet Lily couldn't make her feet move away. The injured child seemed so vulnerable, so alone. Just like me, she thought. A crack echoed through the forest, a gunshot from somewhere in the distance. Probably a settler hunting for dinner. The sound made the native child look up sharply, fear evident even from across the river. They tried to stand but stumbled, clearly in pain. That's when Lily made a decision that would change everything. Without fully understanding why, she stepped out from her hiding place into plain view. The child across the river spotted her immediately and froze. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other across the rushing water. Two children from different worlds, connected by a moment of unexpected discovery. Lily raised her hand slowly in greeting. After a moment's hesitation, the native child, a girl, Lily could now see, returned the gesture. Neither moved closer to the water's edge. To cross would mean entering forbidden territory, for both of them. But something had been exchanged, something important. The distant voices of men shouting broke the spell. The native girl glanced fearfully over her shoulder, then back at Lily. With visible effort, she limped into the shelter of the forest and disappeared. Lily remained motionless, staring at the spot where the girl had vanished. Her mind raced with questions. Who was she? How had she hurt her leg? Would she be all right? More shouting, closer now, spurred Lily into action. She hurried back to her basket, filled it hastily with the herbs she could quickly find, and began the journey back to Widow Chapman's cabin. Her thoughts, however, remained by the river. That evening, as she helped prepare their simple supper of rabbit stew and cornbread, Lily couldn't stop thinking about the native girl. Widow Chapman noticed her distraction. "You're quiet tonight, child. Something troubling you?" Lily stirred the stew, watching the vegetables swirl in the broth. "I was just wondering about the native people across the river. Do you think they're really as dangerous as everyone says?" The old woman's hands paused in their work of kneading dough. "Those people have different ways than ours, child. Different gods, different beliefs. Makes folks nervous, that kind of difference. But are they bad? Are they evil like Mr. Harrison says?" Widow Chapman sighed deeply. "I've lived on this frontier 63 years, child. Seen things that would turn your hair white before it's time. There's good and bad on both sides of that river, mark my words. But times are tense now. Best you stay close to home." That night, as moonlight filtered through the small window of the loft where she slept, Lily made a decision. Tomorrow she would return to the river. She would bring some of Widow Chapman's healing salve for the girl's injured leg. She wasn't sure how she would cross the river or if the girl would even be there, but something in her heart told her it was the right thing to do. Sleep came slowly as Lily imagined what might happen. Would the native girl be afraid? Would there be others with her? What if they took Lily captive, as happened in the frightening stories told around winter fires? Yet beneath the fear lay something stronger, a sense that the path forward somehow involved that river and the injured girl on its far bank. As she finally drifted to sleep, Lily dreamed of stepping stones rising from rushing water, creating a bridge between two worlds. Dawn was still hours away when she woke with a start, her mind clear and determined. Today would change everything, though Lily couldn't possibly know how or why. She only knew she had to try to help, even if it meant crossing boundaries both seen and unseen. Some paths, once taken, can never be unwalked. As the first hints of morning light crept into the sky, Lily Rose Coleman, orphan settler, healer's apprentice, prepared to take such a path one step at a time toward an uncertain future. The early morning air felt cool against Lily's face as she slipped out of Widow Chapman's cabin. She had risen before dawn, completed her morning chores in half the usual time, and packed a small bundle with care. Inside the cloth wrap were a small jar of Widow Chapman's healing salve, clean strips of linen for bandages, and half a loaf of cornbread, her own breakfast portion saved from the previous evening. Her heart raced as she moved swiftly through the woods. What she was doing wasn't exactly forbidden. No one had specifically said settlers couldn't speak to natives. But she knew most folks in Pine Creek would consider it foolish at best, treasonous at worst. "Just want to help?" Lily whispered to herself, pushing aside branches that blocked her path. That's what Mama would have done. The memory of her mother, gentle hands tending to sick neighbors during the fever outbreak that eventually claimed her, strengthened Lily's resolve. Kindness shouldn't stop at invisible boundaries drawn by men with guns and angry words. The forest was coming alive with morning sounds, birds calling to one another, squirrels chattering as they leapt between branches, and somewhere distant, the low grunt of a deer. Lily knew these woods like the lines on her palms, having spent countless hours gathering herbs and exploring while Widow Chapman rested her aching joints. When she reached the grandfather tree, Lily paused. Beyond lay the river, and possibly the injured girl. Would she even be there? Maybe yesterday had been a one-time occurrence. Maybe the girl had only come to the river for water and would never return. Only one way to find out. Lily moved forward until the rushing water came into view. The river seemed higher today, swollen by spring rains upstream. The usual crossing stones were completely submerged, visible only as dark shadows beneath the surface. Crossing would be dangerous, perhaps impossible. Disappointment washed over her. She hadn't considered this obstacle. Perching on a boulder, near the water's edge, Lily scanned the opposite bank for any sign of movement. Nothing. Just trees and underbrush still in the morning light. "Hello?" she called softly, then louder. "Hello? Are you there?" Only the river answered, its constant murmur drowning out her voice. Lily sighed. She should head back before Widow Chapman noticed her absence. Yet something made her stay, a feeling she couldn't explain. "Wait," her instincts whispered. "Just wait." The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. Lily unwrapped her bundle and broke off a piece of cornbread, chewing slowly as she watched the far bank. Birds swooped low over the water, catching insects that hovered above the surface. A family of ducks paddled downstream, the mother leading a line of fluffy ducklings who struggled to keep pace. Then, a movement. Not animal, but human. Careful, cautious. The native girl emerged from between two pine trees, moving with the same limping gait Lily had noticed yesterday. She looked about Lily's age, with long black hair in two braids and a deerskin dress that fell to her knees. The girl stopped at the river's edge, scanning the opposite bank until her eyes found Lily. For a long moment they simply stared at each other across the rushing water. Neither moved, as if breaking the stillness might shatter this fragile connection. Lily raised her hand slowly in greeting, just as she had yesterday. The girl returned. The gesture then pointed to her leg and made a face of pain. She was hurt, just as Lily had suspected. Pointing to the jar of salve, Lily mimicked spreading it on her own leg, then gestured toward the native girl. "I have medicine. For you." The girl seemed to understand. She nodded, then looked at the swollen river between them with obvious concern. She pointed to the water, shook her head, and tapped her injured leg. "I can't cross." Lily stood studying the river with determined eyes. The usual stepping stones were underwater, but she knew this stretch of river better than most. Her father had taught her where the river bottom rose higher, creating shallow patches even during spring flooding. "I'll come to you," Lily called, pointing to herself. Then the water, then the opposite bank. The native girl's eyes widened in alarm. She shook her head vigorously and gestured at the rushing current. But Lily had already made up her mind. Removing her shoes and tying them around her neck by their laces, she rolled up her dress and tucked it into her belt to keep the hem dry. The bundle containing the salve and bandages she secured tightly against her chest. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped into the water. The cold shocked her system, nearly taking her breath away. The current pushed against her legs with unexpected force. Carefully, she felt for the submerged path her father had shown her years ago. There, a slightly higher section of riverbed. Lily moved slowly, testing each foothold before transferring her weight. The water rose to her knees, then her thighs as she ventured farther from shore. One wrong step and the current would sweep her away. On the far bank, the native girl watched with a mixture of fear and amazement. She had moved closer to the water's edge, as if ready to attempt a rescue should Lily falter. Halfway across, Lily's foot slipped on a mossy stone. She gasped, arms pinwheeling as she fought to regain her balance. For one terrifying moment she thought the river would claim her. Then her foot found solid purchase. and she steadied herself, heart hammering against her ribs. The native girl called out something in her own language, a warning perhaps or encouragement. Though the words were unintelligible, the tone conveyed concern. Step by careful step, Lily continued her journey. The current grew stronger in the deepest section, water swirling around her waist. Her teeth chattered from cold, but determination kept her moving forward. 3 more steps. 2. 1. Finally, her feet touched the gradual slope of the opposite bank. Relief flooded through her as she waded into shallower water. She had done it. She had crossed the river, crossed the boundary between 2 worlds. The native girl backed away slightly as Lily emerged from the water, dripping and shivering. This close, Lily could see details she'd missed from across the river. Intricate beadwork decorating the girl's dress, a small pendant of polished stone hanging from a cord around her neck, and most noticeably, the nasty gash on her right leg, partially wrapped with some kind of leaf. "Hello," Lily said softly, keeping her distance to avoid frightening the girl. "I'm Lily." She tapped her chest. "Lily." The girl watched her cautiously, then seemed to understand. She touched her own chest. "Nima." "Nima," Lily repeated, smiling. She pointed to the injured leg. "I brought medicine, to help." Nima's eyes flicked to the bundle Lily carried, then back to her face, uncertainty evident in her expression. Slowly, Lily unwrapped her bundle, showing the jar of salve and bandages. "For your leg, to make it better." She pantomimed applying medicine and wrapping a bandage. A moment of decision hung in the air between them. Then Nima nodded once and gestured to a fallen log nearby. She limped toward it and sat down, extending her injured leg with a wince of pain. Kneeling beside her, Lily carefully removed the leaf covering to reveal an angry red gash about 4 inches long on Nima's calf. The wound wasn't fresh, maybe 2 or 3 days old, but it looked hot and swollen. Without treatment, it would likely worsen. "This will help," Lily said, opening the jar of salve. The sharp smell of herbs filled the air. Widow Chapman's special mixture of yarrow, comfrey, and pine resin. "It might sting a little." Though Nima couldn't understand the words, she seemed to grasp Lily's meaning. She gripped the edge of the log and nodded, bracing herself. As gently as possible, Lily cleaned the wound with water from the small flask she carried, then applied the salve. Nima hissed in pain, but didn't pull away. After covering the wound with the salve, Lily wrapped it with clean linen strips, securing them snugly but not too tight. "There," she said when finished. "Better?" Nima flexed her foot cautiously, then smiled, the first real smile Lily had seen from her. She said something in her own language that sounded grateful, then reached into a small pouch tied at her waist. From it, she withdrew a polished blue stone and held it out to Lily. "For me?" Lily asked, surprised by the gift. When Nima nodded, she accepted it with both hands. "Thank you. It's beautiful." They sat together on the log, the initial tension between them gradually easing. Lily offered the cornbread she had brought, breaking it in half. Nima accepted it with evident delight, taking a small bite and nodding her approval. Though they couldn't speak each other's language, they found ways to communicate. Nima pointed to things around them, trees, birds, the river, saying the words in her language. Lily repeated them, then gave the English words in return. They laughed at each other's pronunciation, the sound of their shared amusement bridging the gap between their worlds. Time passed unnoticed until the sun's position reminded Lily how long she'd been gone. Widow Chapman would be worried sick. She needed to return. Standing reluctantly, Lily gestured toward the river and her side of the bank. "I have to go home now." Nima's face fell, but she nodded in understanding. She tapped her newly bandaged leg, then placed her hand over her heart, a gesture of gratitude that needed no translation. As Lily prepared to recross the river, Nima suddenly touched her arm. Pointing upstream, she motioned for Lily to follow her. Though hesitant to delay her return further, curiosity won out. Nima led her about 50 paces upstream to where the river narrowed considerably. Here several large rocks in. Over the next 2 weeks, Lily and Nima met by the river almost daily. Each morning, Lily would finish her chores in a rush, make excuses about gathering herbs, and slip away to their secret meeting place. Widow Chapman seemed to notice the change in her behavior, but asked few questions, only reminding her to be back before midday. "Don't know what's got you so eager to be in those woods, Inang," the old woman said one morning, watching Lily pack a small bundle. "Just remember what I told you about straying too far." Guilt tugged at Lily's heart. She hated keeping secrets from the kind woman who had taken her in, but some truths were too dangerous to share. Instead, she kissed Widow Chapman's weathered cheek and promised to be careful. The meeting spot they'd chosen was a small clearing near the secret crossing rocks, hidden from view on both sides of the river by thick bushes and overhanging willows. A fallen oak provided a comfortable place to sit, and wildflowers dotted the ground with splashes of purple and yellow. Today, Lily arrived first. She settled on the log and pulled out her latest gift for Nima, a small wooden carving of a bird that she had worked on for 3 evenings by candlelight. Her father had taught her to whittle, and though her skill was basic, she had captured the essence of a chickadee in the simple figure. A soft whistle, like that of a thrush but with a distinct pattern, alerted Lily to Nima's approach. They had developed this signal to avoid startling each other. Lily whistled back, and moments later, Nima pushed through the bushes, her face brightening at the sight of her friend. "Lily," she exclaimed, the English word sounding musical in her accent. "Nima," Lily responded, then added a greeting in Nima's language. "Hanu Wakan." Good morning. They had been teaching each other words and phrases, building a shared vocabulary that bridged their different worlds. Lily now knew about 20 words in Nima's language, while Nima had learned nearly twice that many English words. They supplemented this limited vocabulary with gestures, drawings in the dirt, and the universal language of expression and touch. Nima's leg had healed well. The angry red of infection had faded, and she now walked with only a slight limp. She wore a fresh dress today, decorated with intricate beadwork around the neckline that caught the sunlight in flashes of blue and white. "For you," Lily said, holding out the wooden bird. Nima's dark eyes widened as she took the carving, turning it over in her hands with obvious delight. "Zitkala," she said, which Lily had learned meant bird. Then, with careful pronunciation, "Thank you." From a small pouch at her waist, Nima withdrew her own gift, a bracelet woven from reeds and decorated with tiny shells. She tied it around Lily's wrist, the gesture accompanied by a few words in her language that Lily didn't understand. "It's beautiful," Lily said, admiring how the shells caught the light. "What does it mean?" Nima touched the bracelet, then placed her hand over her heart. "Friend," she said in English, then added something else in her own language. Their daily meetings had fallen into a comfortable pattern. They would share small gifts, practice each other's languages, and tell stories through a mixture of words, drawings, and pantomime. Nima had taught Lily which berries were safe to eat in the forest and how to move silently through the underbrush. In return, Lily shared settler knowledge, how to use a compass, read simple words written in the dirt, and identify medicinal herbs. Today, however, Nima seemed distracted. Her gaze frequently darted toward the trees in the direction of her village, and her usual smile appeared forced. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, miming worry with her hands. Nima frowned, clearly struggling to find the words to explain. She picked up a stick and drew in the dirt. Stick figures of men with bows on one side, others with what looked like guns on the opposite side. "Your people, my people," Nima said, her limited English strained by the complex situation she was trying to describe. Lily nodded. "Yes, settlers, and..." She didn't know the word Nima's people called themselves. "Lakota," Nima supplied. She then drew a line between the two groups and made slashing motions with her hand. "Fight coming." A chill ran through Lily despite the warm spring air. She had heard whispers in the settlement about increasing tensions with the native tribes, but most adults stopped talking when children approached. Last Sunday, several men had gathered outside the meeting hall after church services, their faces grim as they discussed something in hushed tones. "Why fight?" Lily asked, though she already knew part of the answer. The settlers wanted more land, pushing ever westward into hunting grounds the tribes had used for generations. Nima pointed in the direction of the hills beyond Pine Creek. "Hunters there. Not allowed." She made the shape of deer antlers with her fingers, then a shooting motion, Many deer killed. Left to rot, her face showed disgust at the waist. Lily felt ashamed. She had heard Thomas Fletcher boasting about a hunting expedition that had taught those savages a lesson. Was this what he meant? Killing game and leaving it to spoil, simply to prove they could hunt wherever they pleased? Not all settlers bad, Lily said, feeling a need to defend her community even as she recognized the wrong that had been done. Nima's expression softened. She took Lily's hand in hers. Not all Lakota bad. In that moment of understanding, a distant shout broke the stillness of the forest. Male voices coming from the settlers' side of the river. A hunting party or perhaps a patrol. Both girls froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Discovery would be disastrous. Go, Lily whispered urgently, pointing toward the native side of the forest. Quickly! Nima hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Lily in potential danger. But the voices were growing closer, accompanied by the crack of branches underfoot. Go, Lily insisted again, giving her friend a gentle push toward the bushes. With one last concerned look, Nima slipped into the undergrowth like a shadow, her movement so fluid and silent that even Lily, watching directly, could hardly track her departure. The skill of moving undetected through the forest was something Nima had been born to, something the settlers could never match. Lily gathered her things hurriedly, tucking Nima's bracelet under her sleeve to hide it from view. She had just started toward her own side of the river when 3 men broke through the trees into the clearing. Her heart sank. Thomas Fletcher, the blacksmith's son Richard, and old Mr. Cooper, 3 of the most outspoken against the native tribes. The worst possible people to discover her here, so close to the boundary. Well, now what have we here? Thomas said, his beard-framed smile not reaching his eyes. Little Lily rose, all alone in the dangerous woods. Lily clutched her gathering basket tighter. Just collecting herbs for Widow Chapman, Mr. Fletcher. Richard circled around, looking suspiciously at the fallen log where Lily and Nima had been sitting moments before. Mighty close to the river, ain't you? To that Indian side. Widow needs special mushrooms that grow near the water, Lily lied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. For her joint pain, Mr. Cooper, a grizzled man with one eye clouded by a long-ago injury, studied the ground with narrowed eyes. 2 sets of tracks here, he said slowly. One about your size, one smaller. Lily's mind raced. Probably deer, she suggested. I saw a doe and fawn earlier. Thomas exchanged glances with the others, clearly skeptical. Maybe so. Or maybe you've been talking to someone you shouldn't. The accusation hung in the air, heavy with threat. Lily forced herself to look confused rather than frightened. I don't understand, Mr. Fletcher. Those savages been spotted on this side of the river twice this week, Richard said, spitting on the ground. Stealing from traps, messing with boundary markers. Some folks think they might have friends on our side. Informants-like. The implication was clear and terrifying. If they suspected Lily of communicating with Nima's people, it would mean trouble not just for her, but for Widow Chapman as well. I haven't seen anyone, Lily said truthfully, for she considered Nima a friend, not just anyone. But I'll keep watch and tell Mr. Harrison if I do. Mr. Harrison was the settlement's leader, a fair-minded man who had shown kindness to Lily after her parents' deaths. Thomas stared hard at her for a long moment, then nodded curtly. See that you do. These woods aren't safe for a girl alone anymore. He gestured to the others. We'll escort you back to the settlement. That's not necessary, Lily began. Wasn't asking. Thomas cut her off. There's a meeting tonight. Every family's to attend. New rules about venturing out alone, especially for womenfolk and children. As they marched her back toward Pine Creek, Lily's mind whirled with worry. New rules would make it harder to meet Nima. And a meeting meant rising tensions, possibly even preparations for conflict. She needed to warn her friend, to explain why she might not be able to come to their spot for a while, but how? With Thomas and the others watching her closely, she couldn't even look back toward the river where, she felt certain, Nima might be hidden, waiting to make sure Lily was safe. The settlement came into view, smoke rising from cabin chimneys against the midday sky. Usually the sight filled Lily with comfort. Today it felt like a prison. She thought of Nima's drawing, stick figures facing each other with weapons raised, and felt sick with dread. 3 days had passed since the settlement meeting, and Lily hadn't been able to return to the river. New rules required children to travel in groups, and Thomas Fletcher's teenage son had been assigned to patrol the eastern woods, exactly where the secret crossing lay. Lily felt like a prisoner, her thoughts constantly drifting to Nima, wondering if her friend waited by their log each morning, worried about her absence. Rain had fallen steadily since dawn, drumming on the cabin roof as Lily helped Widow Chapman sort dried herbs. Outside, the settlement lay quiet, most folks staying indoors to avoid the downpour. Perfect weather for slipping away unnoticed, if only she could find an excuse. "Those clouds look ominous," Widow Chapman said, peering through their small window at the darkening sky. "River will be rising by nightfall." The river. Lily's heart quickened. She thought of the crossing stones already barely visible during their last meeting. If heavy rain continued, they would be completely submerged, making passage impossible. If she wanted to see Nima, to warn her about the settlers' increasing hostility, it had to be today. "We're almost out of willow bark," Lily said carefully, examining their herb supply. "And Mr. Harrison's rheumatism will be acting up in this damp," Widow Chapman sighed. "That's true enough. He was hobbling something awful at the meeting." She glanced at the rain again, then at Lily. "I suppose you could fetch some, if you're quick about it. There's plenty of willow by the mill pond." The mill pond lay in the opposite direction from the river in Nima's village, but it would get Lily out of the cabin. "I'll be fast as lightning," she promised, already reaching for her cloak. Widow Chapman caught her arm gently. "Something troubling you, child? You've been distracted these past days, quiet-like." For a moment, Lily considered telling her everything, about Nima, their friendship, the growing tension. Widow Chapman had lived on the frontier longer than anyone else in Pine Creek. Perhaps she would understand, but fear held her tongue. Not fear for herself, but for Nima. If word spread that a native girl regularly crossed to the settler side, even for innocent meetings. Just worried about all the talk of fighting, Lily said instead, which wasn't entirely untrue. The old woman's face softened. "Folks have been scared since the Reynolds boy was found with that arrow in him." Lily's head snapped up. "What? When?" 2 days passed. "Hunting with his pa beyond the North Ridge. Arrow caught him in the shoulder." Widow Chapman shook her head. "He'll recover, but his father's calling for blood." Icy dread pooled in Lily's stomach. This was exactly what Nima had feared, the spark that would ignite open conflict. She needed to reach her friend now more than ever. "I'll be careful," Lily promised, kissing Widow Chapman's cheek before hurrying out into the rain. Once outside, she made a show of heading toward the mill pond, aware that eyes might be watching from cabin windows. Only when she reached the cover of trees did she change direction, circling wide around the settlement perimeter, until she could double back toward the river. The forest felt different in the rain. Threatening somehow, with limited visibility and sounds muffled by the constant patter of water on leaves. Twice she froze, certain she'd heard footsteps, only to realize it was just rainwater dripping from branches. By the time she neared the river, her clothes were soaked through and mud caked her boots. What she saw when the water came into view made her gasp. The gentle river had transformed into a churning, angry beast. Brown water surged between the banks, carrying branches and debris in its powerful current. The secret crossing stones had vanished completely beneath the torrent. No one could safely cross today. Not Lily, not Nima. Disappointment and relief battled within her. She couldn't reach her friend, but at least Nima wouldn't attempt the dangerous crossing either. Surely she would see the danger. Lightning flashed, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The storm was intensifying. Lily turned to head back to the settlement when something caught her eye on the far bank. A flash of movement, a glimpse of blue-white fabric. "No," she whispered. "Nima, no." But it was her friend, standing at the river's edge, searching the opposite bank, looking for Lily. Even through the rain, Lily could see Nima's posture, tense, urgent. She held something in her hand, gesturing with it as if it were vitally important. Lily waved frantically, trying to catch Nima's attention. "Go back," she shouted over the roar of the water. "It's not safe." Whether Nima heard or simply spotted the movement, her head turned toward Lily. Relief visibly washed over her face. She held up what appeared to be a rolled hide, a message of some kind, and pointed repeatedly upstream toward the settlement. "I can't understand," Lily called. "The river's too dangerous." Nima's response was lost in another thunderclap. To Lily's horror, her friend began moving along the bank, looking for a crossing point. She was going to try to reach the settler side despite the dangerous conditions. No, Lily screamed, running along her own bank to keep pace. Wait until tomorrow. But Nima had spotted something, a fallen tree that reached partway across the churning water. With desperate determination, she began to climb out onto the slippery trunk. Lily's heart nearly stopped. Nima, don't, too late. The native girl was already inching her way along the log, the precious message clutched tightly in one hand. She moved with the natural grace and balance that Lily had always admired, but even Nima's skill was tested by the rain-slick surface. Halfway across, the inevitable happened. Nima's foot slipped. She tumbled sideways, managing to catch herself at the last moment but dropping the hide scroll into the raging water below. No. Nima's anguished cry carried across the distance as she watched the message disappear into the torrent. For a heartbeat, Lily thought her friend would jump in after it. Instead, Nima continued forward, more determined than ever to reach the settler side. 3/4 across, disaster struck. The part of the log extending over the deepest section suddenly cracked, weakened by the force of the water slamming against it. Nima lunged forward as her bridge collapsed beneath her, fingers clawing for purchase on the remaining trunk. She caught hold, but barely, her lower body plunging into the raging current. The force of the water pulled at her, threatening to tear away her tenuous grip. Lily didn't remember deciding to move. One moment she was watching in horror. The next she was splashing through the shallows near her bank, searching for anything to help. A branch, a rope, something to extend to her struggling friend. Nothing. Only Lily herself could reach Nima, and only by entering the dangerous water. Hold on, she screamed, wading deeper, feeling the current tug at her legs. Nima's strength was failing. Her fingers, white with effort, began to slip from the wet wood. Time slowed to a crawl as Lily made her decision. Turning, she fought her way back to shore and ran upstream about 20 paces to where the river bent slightly. If she entered the water there and let the current carry her, she might be able to grab the fallen log where Nima clung. No time to reconsider. No time for fear. Taking the deepest breath she could, Lily plunged into the river. The cold shocked her system. The current, even stronger than it appeared from shore, instantly swept her downstream. She fought to keep her head above water while aiming her body toward the fallen tree. Everything depended on timing now. Miss the log and both girls would be at the mercy of the flood. Nima saw her coming. Despite her precarious position, her eyes widened in alarm. She shook her head frantically, trying to warn Lily away from danger rather than thinking of her own safety. The log approached with frightening speed. Lily stretched out her arms, fingers spread wide, praying to catch hold. The rough bark scraped her palms as she slammed into the wood, nearly knocking the air from her lungs. Her fingers closed around a splintered edge, holding tight despite the river's attempt to tear her away. Now she hung just a few feet from Nima, both girls clinging to the same lifeline. "Take my hand," Lily gasped, inching closer along the log. Nima looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. With tremendous effort, she reached one hand toward Lily, keeping the other locked on her handhold. Their fingers touched, slipped, then caught. Grip secure, Lily pulled, using her own precarious position as leverage to help Nima climb higher onto the more stable portion of the log. Together, inch by agonizing inch, they moved toward the settler bank where the tree remained firmly rooted in the ground. After what felt like hours, but could only have been minutes, they collapsed on the muddy shore, gasping for breath, alive but far from safe. The rain continued to pound down around them, and the thunder rumbled overhead like an angry spirit. "Why?" Lily demanded when she could speak again. "Why risk your life to cross?" Nima's eyes were wide with urgency despite her exhaustion. "Warning," she managed in English. "Warriors coming tonight, attack settlement." Lily's blood ran cold. "Because of the Reynolds boy? The arrow?" Nima nodded grimly. "Not us. Not Lakota arrow." She made a different gesture, one Lily had never seen before. "Enemy tribe." "Want war between us and White Eyes."